It's been more than 19 days since Russia-Ukraine war started. Right now, I have with us Consul General of US, Mr. David Ranz in Mumbai. Mr. David, welcome to TV9.
Thank you, Nero. It's good to be here.
Yeah. First of all, what's your take on the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Like recently, one of the journalists from US has also been killed there.
Well, I think it's important to call this what it is, which is a unprovoked, premeditated, and unjustified attack by Russia on its neighbor, Ukraine, which has unleashed one of the worst humanitarian crises in modern history. And the journalist that you mentioned who was killed yesterday, and my heart goes out to his family and friends and colleagues, is just one example of the thousands and thousands of civilians who have been killed or injured as a result of Russia's aggression. The international community must stand up for the principles of sovereignty, that diplomatic discussions are critical to resolve conflicts. The conflicts should not be resolved by force. As President Biden has said, now is the time for every world leader to stand up against Putin's aggression and for the Ukrainian people.
So what's your take on India's position on the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, I would leave it to the Indian government to characterize its own position. I will say that the U.S.-India relationship has never been stronger. Our partnership has never been stronger. We cooperate on every conceivable kind of issue that any two countries cooperate on. Nothing that Putin can do is going to divide us and break up our relationship. But I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is this is a conflict between democratic countries who want to stand up for rule of law, for the principles and norms that were established for the community of nations after World War II, and autocracies like Russia that want to overturn that world order. And just to repeat President Biden's statement, it is time now for every world leader to stand up on behalf of the Ukrainian people and against the unprovoked, premeditated, and unjustified attack by Russia on Ukraine.
In such a situation when we can see clearly the world divided into two groups, do you really think this might have, like impact on India-US ties?
Well, as I said before, the U.S. and India have a strong partnership that goes back generations. In fact, it goes back hundreds of years. But this year, we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of our diplomatic relationship. And there is nothing that Putin can do that's going to break our relationship apart or undermine our strategic partnership. When you say that this is dividing the world into two camps, I fundamentally agree. We have on the one hand the vast majority of the world, the community of democracies that care about international norms and standards, who believe that sovereign nations should have a right to make their own decisions and should not be subject to coercion or threats from a neighbor, and who believe in upholding the international norms that we have fought so hard for here in the Indo-Pacific region with the government of India. So we are continuing to work with our partners like India and other like-minded partners to come up with a community response, a communal response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine.
So do you really think in such a scenario the economic sanctions by the US are sufficient? Is it really building pressure on Russia?
Absolutely. The economic sanctions have put a huge amount of pressure on Russia. All you need to do is look at the collapse of the ruble. Russia's economy is in a shambles, and I think it is already putting immense pressure on Putin and his cronies and oligarchs. You see their assets being seized. You see their private jets and their billion-dollar yachts being seized, and this is creating huge pressure. I think it's also important to underscore that these sanctions represent the common effort of over 30 countries that represent 1/2 of the world's economy. So this is not any one country. This is, as I said, the community of democracies in the world who are standing up for a democratically elected government and standing against an autocrat, a dictator who has violently attacked his neighbor with no justification whatsoever and unleashed untold human suffering and horror in Ukraine.
It's been 19 days. So many civilians have been killed, and it is getting severe day by day. So, in such a scenario, how do you see the expansion of NATO in the West?
It's really important to understand that NATO is a defensive alliance. It is not a threat to anybody. And anybody who says otherwise is just a tool of Putin's misinformation, lies, and propaganda. Moreover, it is a basic principle of international norms and diplomacy that any country has the right to choose its own alliances, its own partnerships, its own strategic relationships. Putin has no right to choose that for the Ukrainian people or for the Ukrainian government. It is up to the people and government of Ukraine to decide what alliances, partnerships, or relationships it wishes to uphold.
Apart from all this, would you like to mention anything else that you really think is important?
Well, thanks very much for offering that opportunity, because I suspect that your viewership feels the same way that I and many other people do, which is we're watching this humanitarian catastrophe unfold, and our hearts go out to the people who are suffering, the civilians, the refugees, and wondering what they can do to help. So I really encourage your viewers who are looking for a way to support the Ukrainian people, and not just the Ukrainian people, but all of the people who are suffering from this catastrophe that has been unleashed on Europe and the world as a result of Putin's unprovoked aggression. They can go to our social media and websites, and we have information there about well-respected international organizations that are providing support to Ukraine and its people. If they wish to provide some kind of support, that would be a great way to show our collective unity with and solidarity with Ukraine and its people.
Thank you so much for sharing your views and giving us your valuable time.
Thank you, Nero, very much for having me.
Thank you so much. So, for more updates on Russia-Ukraine war and latest news, stay tuned. This is Neeru signing off with camera person Saidat.